our guests are, and I'm going to start from my right, Dr. Kent Farnsworth, who is Professor of Educational Leadership, and he has taught world religions at the University of Missouri at St. Louis. And we have Ms. Rihab Sawah, who is Associate Professor of Physics and Astronomy at Moberly Community College. She also does presentations on religious pluralism in Syria. And opposite me is Mr. Lincoln Phillips, who is Associate Professor of Visual Art at the Community College of Denver in Colorado. Welcome and thank you for joining me. Can I just ask you briefly why you are here? What are you doing here?
Well, we're a group of educators. There are 14 of us in our group. And we thought that it's important to try to help our countrymen understand how religions can work more cooperatively with each other. I think Americans in general have a very limited understanding of how religious pluralism is working in other parts of the world. And so we hope to take lessons back with us to our own school systems and professional opportunities that will help people gain greater understanding for religious pluralism, particularly in secular Muslim countries.
Rihab, do you want to say anything?
Well, there was a group of us, 3 of us particularly, who applied for a Fulbright grant last year in October. We were hoping that we would be funded for a program that would bring us to Syria and then later on to Turkey to learn about religious pluralism in these 2 countries. And so we applied with the U.S. Department of Education. And luckily we got approval, and we chose a total of 14 of us who came to Syria, and we leave tonight to go to Turkey to learn about the same.
And so this whole thing is funded by the U.S.?
U.S. Department of Education. We are all Fulbright scholars here in Syria.
Okay. So why did you actually choose Syria to learn about religious pluralism?
Well, it's my country of origin.
Okay, so we won't ask you then, Rihab. Let's
As I understand it, I was a participant, applied for, and then thankfully selected for this. And as I understand it, Syria as an example of a secular state wherein religious pluralism is present, that there's a widespread tolerance of different religions in this country. So it's a wonderful model to come and study.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when we talk about religious dialogue, who does it really benefit, in your opinion?
When religious dialogue takes place?
Yes.
I think everyone in the community does, and I think it brings people close together where they learn to see the human face of each other and go beyond religious differences, and they find out that after all, we all seek the same mountain summit, if you may, even though we may take different paths as we climb the mountain. But the goal is the same, and we can come together regardless of the different paths that we take to reach that mountain summit and see each other as human beings and really live together in peace, which I think is the ultimate goal in the world.
I think one of the interesting lessons to us as we've spoken with the religious leaders that we've talked to is that that's been the message that we've heard from all of them, that they see it as their responsibilities to help people really look beyond religion and begin to think about each other as human beings and how they have so many commonalities rather than differences. And in fact, that the religions don't separate them any more than they allow them to.
So what would you say are the pillars of religious dialogue? What are the main pillars?
Well, I see that as one, that we are all human beings. We all have the same basic needs and necessities. And if we can agree that it's okay for you to wear this shirt and for me to wear this shirt, why does it matter that I wear this religion and you wear that religion? And that we should not make it more of an issue beyond that, religion itself. That it's just a shirt that I wear. And I choose this shirt for myself, and it's my personal choice and no one else's. But as far as our commonalities, we all share the same basic human necessities.
And particularly in the Western traditions, we all view ourselves as creations of some divine being. And in fact, the names for God are really derived from the same words. And so I think a pillar of religion that's common to all is this sense that we're divine creations. And if that's true, I would think that God, however you would like to think of God, wouldn't like us to be fighting with each other, but instead would be hoping that we would find ways to live cooperatively together as his creations.
So how secular can we actually get in interfaith dialogue? How secular can we be?
I think it drives to the point through its use of the word secular, because that definition of what defines secular activity, can you have a secular dialogue within interfaith discussions, is the root of the crux of the question, really. And I don't think that a broad definition of secularism within interfaith dialogue is necessarily an appropriate point of discussion, appropriate locus to center around. I think secularism has its purpose within sort of societal operations, if you will, and intergovernmental operations. But the need to understand each other without needing to resort or feeling that we need to come to a secular commonality within interfaith dialogues, I think it's problematic at best. I don't know if that's appropriate.
I think that's right. I'm not sure that we're suggesting that we can't celebrate difference at the same time. And in fact,
no,
I
that's
hope
a point that I'd like you to make. Yes,
I hope that that we're not suggesting that there needs to be some coming together in a universal sense so that we're all alike and all thinking alike. I don't think that's a part of what we view as being the ideal goal. In fact, I think we see religious pluralism as being a way to learn to celebrate each other's difference by seeing what's positive about those differences rather than focusing on the negative.
I'll give you an example of that in the city where I live, which is in Columbia, Missouri. When it's the first day of Ramadan, the Christian and Jewish members who are part of this interfaith community actually put together an iftar dinner for the Muslims of that community to honor that this is an important event for them. And when it's Christmas time, it's also done the same way. And when it's Christmas time, in fact, there are people from the different communities, the Jewish and the Christian and the Muslim, that come together to celebrate Christmas together to honor the Christian community. Same for the Muslim and the same for the Jewish community. So as Kent was saying, it's not about blending in our traditions, but rather respecting and honoring, and to have the ability to share these traditions with each other without feeling that we're being blasphemous to our own faith. That it's okay to celebrate Christmas with a Christian if you're a Muslim. It's okay to celebrate Hanukkah with a Jew if you're a Christian or Muslim. It's okay to celebrate Eid or Ramadan with a Muslim if you're a Jew and a Christian. That there's nothing wrong about that.
Would you say that there is a very thin line where of which people are wary of?
Beyond which they don't wish to cross?
That's right.
I think that's
because sometimes,
true.
you do get together and you communicate, and then something small will come out, and you'll stop at it, and it'll irk you.
I think some of that is created by religious leadership, frankly, as a way to protect territory.
That's right.
And so I think we're all raised with some sense of where boundaries are. And as we approach them, we gain a certain sense of uneasiness. But often I think those boundaries are not defined by the fundamental principles of the religion, but by sort of a codification of religion that occurs over time.
It is the moment at which politics sneaks back into what is otherwise an open.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, that's sort of a little tinge of that, I think, that stops people.
Rihab, can I ask you about, you said that you talk about religious pluralism in Syria. You lecture about it in universities in the USA. So what exactly do you present?
Well, I talk about how Syria is the land where the messages of Christianity and Islam really spread to the rest of the world, and how Syria also houses one of the oldest Jewish communities in the world. And so these people have always lived side by side with no conflict. In fact, one of my best friends is a Christian, and it took me a while to figure that out because people don't ask what your religion is in the first place. and they just, as a matter of fact, find out later that, oh, you're this, faith or that faith.
And it doesn't really make a difference.
No, not a bit, not a bit.
So you,
I have a passion to bring this message to people in the West because of how we as Syrians are presented in the media in the U.S. I make a point to travel as often as I can to present on Syria, to show people that what you hear is about 99% false, maybe 1%.
And why are we presented so badly, do you reckon?
I think it's, again, for political purposes. Politicians have agendas, and I think that's a known fact about them. So
you try to fight politics.
Yes,
this
but
way.
I do it through culture.
Okay.
And other
I
ways.
think it goes beyond politics. I think it goes to what people view as news. And people don't view the ordinary as newsworthy. And so you have to create a sense of some kind of issue in order for people to view it as being newsworthy. And so I think it is a combination of politics and media creation. The media wanting to be there to be issues, because then and people will watch.
Mr. Phillips, what was your own personal experience with interfaith dialogue?
Well, in terms of the photography courses,
That's right,
I see photography, like all the visual arts and writing and communication, is that form for individual voice to come through and shape its own message, really, from the individual, not from a larger sort of cooperative entity. And I came in contact with individuals who were connected to either the issues of Islamic faith as practiced by families in the States, in my community, or individuals, young students who had come from this region and were in the midst of attempting to adapt in some way or maintain their individuality. So that came through in their work, in their photographic work. A young woman, Muna Suleiman, came from an Islamic family, and her choice for the narrative project was to show us her family and her home, and deliver to us a message of the truth of their practice within our society.
And you found that informative?
Very much so, very much so. And it was invigorating to the dialogue of the class that the students learned so very much just by the presence of that individual and their ability to speak to their own truth. Yeah.
Do you think that Islam in the US is different to Islam in the Middle East?
In many ways, yes and no.
The floor is yours.
It's not different in the sense that the practices are the same. As far as the rituals of the religion that people practice, the daily prayers, the Friday prayers, fasting Ramadan, celebrating the Eids, Adha and Fitr, and so on. It's different in a way that you find people from all different countries come together in one congregation. So you enter a mosque and you'll run into a Pakistani and someone from Bangladesh and someone from China and India and Saudi Arabia and Syria and Egypt and Mauritania and the U.S. and African Americans in the U.S. And in that sense, it's like walking into a room somewhere in the United Nations. And in that sense, I think it's very enriching to be part of a Muslim community in the U.S.
Can we talk a little bit about your trip in Syria?
Sure.
So, how did you benefit? Let's put it that way.
Well, I'll leave it to both Lincoln.
Okay, right.
Well, Rahab organized our trip and just did a wonderful job. We couldn't, in fact, I think we found ourselves each day thinking, we can't have something happen today that's just more incredible than what's been happening already, and then there it is. It's just been one example after another of how central this part of the world is to the development of the faiths that all of us embrace. And also one personal encounter after another with people who have just been so warm and embracing and sort of surprised. They wonder, why are you here? What's an American doing in Syria? And it gives us a chance to talk and share our own thoughts with each other.
So where have you been then?
We started in Damascus with lectures that were provided support for the rest of our time, and went to
So sorry, you gave the lectures, or
mainly people
Right.
that were
Okay.
And some were organized by the Ministry of Culture in Syria.
Okay.
And then we had some other presenters, including Kent and myself, and a few other independent ones that I've asked if they can come and present to us.
Help to give us some context for what we're about to experience.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So so it was Damascus, and then.
Then we took a day trip to Malula, then headed northeast to Palmyra, over to the coast to Tartus, and then up to meet some friends, Armenian Christian friends of Rehab's up in the very northwest corner of the country. Then came back down through, you have to help me out here.
We went through Ebla and
Ebla,
then Hama
Ebla,
and Homs.
Hama.
And of course we
Homs.
visited the three main citadels in Syria, Al-Hussoun, Al-Marqab, and Salah ad-Din.
And
They
so
were
the
both
whole
Sunnis.
point of this is that you actually see
Right.
religious pluralism.
To experience
To
it rather than
experience
hear
it.
about it.
Right.
And we've attended services of various denominational groups as we've traveled. We were at the mosque for morning prayer yesterday morning, for example.
Yes,
Was that this morning?
Friday.
It was this morning.
This morning.
this morning, yes.
This morning.
4 a.m. Yeah.
Oh right. Okay. Not Friday prayers.
No, it was
No,
the
no.
dawn prayer.
Dawn prayer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's something magical about dawn, so I thought they should experience that.
It was.
And attended a Syrian Christian
Right.
service
Yeah.
and an Armenian service. And,
Did you say Syriac?
Syriac?
Yes, Syriac.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
Syriac,
Okay.
excuse me.
Very good. Yeah. Did you meet with any Muslim leaders, religious leaders?
We did. Actually, we met first with a very important Christian leader who was the first Syriac Patriarch, Zakka Iwas, and that was a wonderful, very transforming encounter with him and meeting with him. And then we met with the Grand Mufti, Dr. Hussoun, which was also very touching and
Very wonderful.
I think changed people's hearts in ways that are long-lasting.
Dr. Hussoun likes to talk about
Yes.
interfaith dialogue.
Oh,
Yes, yes.
absolutely.
So,
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we also met with the Armenian priest in Kasab,
Okay.
who led the prayer, prayer that morning that we attended. And then we had a meeting with him. So he told us about the Armenian people in Syria and their religious freedom that they definitely enjoy here in Syria. And then today we went to the synagogue in the Old City and also attended a Jewish service there and met with the leaders of the community there and, just asked them about how old this place and what are the different holidays you celebrate and, just some basic information.
So what are you going to do with all this information that you've amassed once you go back home, once you go back to the USA?
You want to
think
talk
to-
about your assignments?
Yes. Well, we are, as part of the Fulbright mechanism for bringing us here, when we return, we'll make formal presentations. All of us, as we disperse back in, all 14 of us and more as we go back, informative discussions that really are based upon our direct experience of Syria and ultimately Turkey as well, to help strip away some of the misinformation and allow people to hear from somebody they know, direct experience, and hopefully something called truth about what's happening here, as well as incorporating it into our coursework across disciplines. We have mathematician, we have other art people as well, English, history.
How would you
Lots of
incorporate it, though? I'm actually curious about that point.
Well, I think there's something interesting about opening, for me, I could speak specifically, about opening a rather large art history survey book and seeing the one chapter on Islamic art, which really actually contains regional art practice from the differing faiths. However, I feel that there's a lot to be added to that within my own discipline of visual arts. And I think in some sense direct experience brought into the classroom is the most invigorating for the student. They see an individual that speaks passionately from a place of knowledge, of direct experience, and their eyes brighten up a little bit. You wake them up a little bit in the class, which is always a good thing.
Rehab, what would you be doing?
Well, I teach physics and astronomy, and one of the talks that I gave to the group here was about the scientific advancements during the 800 years of the Islamic civilization that really led the way for the Renaissance to come about in Europe. And so I teach my astronomy and my physics class about some very prominent astronomers and physicists that really laid the foundation for what we call the scientific method and experimentation, and all the basis for modern science started there, which is completely missing from textbooks in the West, unfortunately.
Well, I think in a discussion about Islam in a world religions class, it would be interesting now to ask students to take a country like Syria and describe what they think the religious environment is like. And then be able to lead a discussion from a perspective of experience about what the reality is. And they will see it as very monolithic. They'll see it as 99% Muslim. And to learn that virtually a quarter of the population is not. And not only is not, but is very actively engaged with the rest of the community, will be more than revealing to them.
So when you go back home, what sort of memory of Syria would you take with you? What's the strongest memory that you will have?
I think I was thinking about this before, and we've seen so many astounding archaeological evidence and physical evidence, and met with sort of representatives of the government here. So there's this overarching kind of wonderful richness to it. But the thing that strikes me the most is the warmth of the individual on the street. And as Kent mentioned, this surprise in some sense that we are here and that we want to shake hands with them, and they definitely want to shake hands with us. We've been welcomed very much wherever we go. And there was one little moment we got on a minibus the very first day we were here. Kent may not know that we went shopping, and we went into the city, and a young man who's standing at the minibus stop helped us. He said, "Oh, no problem. I'll tell you where to go," and got us on the bus and spoke to the driver. And at one point riding down, we got silent, and he asked us, "So where are you from?" And we said, "America." And he stops for a moment and he says, "America, oh my." And his eyes were up, but then a smile came on his face. I think I'll remember that. He was very pleased.
What do you remember of home, of here, when you go
Well,
back?
I remember so much. In fact, I almost relive all my experiences for a few months after I return. But I think what I will remember from this trip is watching these wonderful people be transformed almost 180 degrees. I remember the day that I met them at the airport, and I look at them today and look in their eyes, and they're completely different people. And that brings joy to my heart. And it makes me feel that my efforts do bring results, even though they're minute. And it brings also a promise of possibly potential future Fulbright grants that we might apply for and bring more people who will also return back home and become themselves ambassadors.
No, that's very moving.
Yes.
You were here when you were 15 years, you said to me.
Yes, I
So
was.
will you carry a memory back home from this time or from then?
Well, my memories there are age 15 kinds of memories. I got lost in the souk. and again, it was a human interest story. And I spoke some Farsi, so I tried to speak Farsi to people, and none of whom understood.
No,
but
no,
they did
it's
understand
different
that
from
I was
Arabic.
lost. And one person after another helped me find my way out of the souk back to the hotel where I was staying. And so it's a similar memory. And I think if we're really honest about our intent to help people understand that differences are creations at this level and that similarities are creations at this level, it's those human stories that will be the most important to us, and they'll be just extensions of the people helping me out of the souk.
Well, good luck to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very moving.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.